I'm Michael Casey, and this is WSJ Afterword, our ongoing series of interviews with authors of new and notable books. Today we're talking to Bob Mankoff, cartoon editor of The New Yorker, and the author of the new memoir, How About Never Is Never Good For You. Bob, thanks so much for joining us. I've got to tell you, this was a really fun book to read. And I must say, I wasn't really surprised, because I'm one of these people who, you know, I'm sure that not everybody admits to this, who the first thing they do when they get their weekly New Yorker is flick through all the cartoons first. So thanks very much for a great read.
We did a survey, and 98% of the people read the cartoons first, and the other 2% lie.
I think that's absolutely accurate. So I think the personal experience.
Yeah.
Now, but you know, people must look at your job and think, what a dream job. It's, and it certainly sounds from your book as if you thoroughly enjoy it. So tell us, how do we get in there? How does somebody end up as the cartoon editor for a prestigious publication?
Well, first of all, I should say you can't, because I'm already here. So really.
So, but you
can't. Well, how? You know, I would say it's a serendipity, and I don't think there's very many cartoon editors around. Maybe Hugh Hefner is still doing it, and really there's very few magazines that do cartoons, but the New Yorker, it makes sense, still does, because the New Yorker literally invented the magazine cartoon as sort of as we know it now. Well, it helped that I was a cartoon. I sold my first cartoon in 1977 to the New Yorker. So I just overnight in 1997, I became cartoon editor.
But it wasn't that an easy job even getting that first cartoon published,
first
right?
cartoon, as I said, I submitted thousands, and I was selling cartoons to other magazines, but the New Yorker was the Everest of cartooning. You know, I've said, you know, the New Yorker is to magazine cartooning what sort of God is to religion. Without it, you really don't have it. It's really, and I don't want to disparage any other magazine cartoons, even as I am disparaging them. But when it's in the New Yorker, it matters. Right. It matters to people, partly because they're not a comic supplement to the magazine. Right. They're right there with the serious articles, making their point in a humorous way, but as I kidded David Remnick the other day when he toasted me about this book, I mean, David goes from, he writes 5 amazing articles that are fantastic articles in the New Yorker, yet we all know 20 years from now the thing that's going to be on the refrigerator is not that article, right. But the cartoon. So before that I was a graduate student. You know, my advice to a lot of people is have to be a cartoonist and have no other talent. That will help. That will put your back to the wall.
You almost made it through to get a PhD though, but one of the things that's interesting about your cartooning style is that you use pointillism. Right. And we at the Wall Street Journal, of course, we use a similar thing for our famous head cuts. The difference is, of course, that we do it with a computer. Right. You do it by hand. So
I once tried to automate it by putting my technical pen at the end of an electric toothbrush, but that didn't work. Right. But I just found that I went to the High School of Music and Art, and you know, it's the strangest thing. In the book, I retell how I used to look at photographs with a magnifying glass. If you look, they all ask, they're all dots. Right. And I started out as a kid drawing a lot of different ways, but also doing this dot style. Right. And for me, it was a type of sketching, and I absolutely advise no one else to do it.
How long does it take this one, for example, that we have
that
here?
Cartoon.
How long does that take?
That cartoon, it's one of my first cartoons. It has a jester hanging there, and it says, "Please tell the king." I remember the punchline. Yet one of the thousands of cartoons the New Yorker rejected at the time. That must have took 12, 13 hours with the smallest, you know,
funny that was actually rejected. I actually really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that was rejected. That's 74 or 75. Eventually I had to modify the style simply because of repetitive, you know, stress injuries.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and of course your most famous is the one that you draw the title from, How About, you know, is now Thursday's out, How About Never Is Never Good For You. It ended up on T-shirts and underwear and everywhere.
Yeah, thongs, everything. where I don't get any money for it, but I hope it gives people, you know, some.
What do you think resonated in this one with the public?
Well, I think identification for one thing. We all have people asking them that we don't want to meet, that somehow we have to be polite and put off, or somehow jiggle it around so eventually we do meet them. And what we'd all like to say is, you know, could we just stop? I think we've had enough lunches together. You're not a bad guy, but how about never? The other thing was that I think there's a superiority thing going in it. You know, that was partly one of the Thomas Hobbes' theory of humor superiority. And then I think its classic formula in a way is that it's a type of mashup because the syntax is polite, but the message is rude.
Right.
So that's sort of how it works. You get this, and of course there's the surprise at the end because even though it sounds polite, it's actually rude. And a lot of humor works that way.
Now you've actually given us a few tricks of the trade in the book, which I thought was very generous of you. And one of the things that interested me is this notion of familiarity, of the genre that keeps repeating itself. You know, the classic deserted island.
Right.
But in this case, we've got St. Peter at the Pearly Gates, which I think is another classic one.
Right. It's wait, those weren't lies. That was spin.
Right.
So what I said in the book, and is true, is that people like novelty, but within a cocoon of familiarity, forms that they're used to. That's why, now they run out eventually, whether it's a knock-knock joke or a mashup or a lolcat. But if you just saw one lolcat, you know, it's not maybe that funny. After a while, you understand, well, this is sort of a genre. It's a trope. And the inventiveness is working within that format. Interestingly, you know, I have this whole humorology thing where we study humor. And if you do stand-up routines, and you cut them off right before the punchline, you ask one group of people to predict the punchline, another group of people just to rate the joke. People, not all, tend to like the most predictable punchlines. The one that you're almost thinking of, and it gets there right. You know, rather than something that's completely unexpected.
Right, it generates some sort of response that it's almost like a knee-jerk response to it. Another one that I found, I've always loved, is one of your best-selling cartoons from the New York Cartoon Bank. I have a bit of a bias in this because I actually wrote a book about the image of Che Guevara. But what I find so striking about that is just, again, a mashup of entrenched images, entrenched icons. Talk to that, if you would, for us.
Well, it's interesting everything about this. I wouldn't say all, because anytime you say all, you're wrong, but overwhelmingly humor involves what I call diminishment. Something has to be taken down a notch. Something has to be a little bit degraded, a little bit made fun of. It could be government, it could be religion. I was once teaching a course in editorial cartoon, and this delightful boy from Pakistan said, how come there are no cartoons praising government? There can't be cartoons praising government. Here, this would not work as well if it was Bart with Che on the T-shirt.
Right, yes, absolutely. And also this idea of current events is important as a tool as well. In this one, the Higgs Boson particle, that was big news when this cartoon came out. I love this one, always the last place you look in the drawer.
Now, truthfully, that cartoon's okay, but it's great if it occurs in that moment.
Right.
Just like the Higgs boson. So there's a formula also, the closer you are to the topicality, every single joke that Jay Leno ever told or that's going on currently is basic. I mean, you're not, and I'm not saying, you know, these people aren't talented, they're very talented, but would you watch their monologue a year later? It would hardly mean anything at all to you.
Right.
So one of the things that changed on the Tina Brown and certainly David Remnick, whose background is reporting, is if something's in the news, you know, we're going to have a cartoon.
And of course, cartoons play an important role in journalism itself, right? I mean, they sort of complementarity to what the
I think what's different about cartoons and the New Yorker cartoons is everything is refracted through the prism of the personal. Rather than editorial cartoons, it's Putin without his shirt off and stuff. We're not going to make a cartoon. You're not going to see Putin in a New Yorker cartoon. If it's going to be about gay marriage, it's not going to be about a right-wing evangelist you're not going to see, or you're not going to see Ted Cruz. What you will see is a couple watching television and the guy is looking and he's saying, gays and lesbians getting married, haven't they suffered enough? So that or a cartoon I did where the guy is talking to the woman, a middle-aged couple in bed, he's saying, what's your opinion on same-sex marriage? So these are, we're making comments, and the comments they're ambiguous in a way. And I think they correctly feel how most people feel about these issues. They're not partisans. What we're I better not mention anybody in this network. I mean, and there are partisans, and there's reason for O'Reilly to be one thing, and the Wall Street Journal to be one thing, and the New York Times to be another. But for most human beings, that's a rather artificial position.
Right. On Saturday, we had an essay in the review section of the Wall Street Journal by Scott Weems.
Weems,
exactly. And I wonder whether you planted this essay.
No, I didn't. I didn't. Because I will be writing a 16-page rebuttal.
Oh, really? It seems like humorists are made out like the heroes of the world. We can withstand pain.
You know, here's the thing. And there's a certain truth to the fact that You know, it sharpens your cognitive skill. It's the mind at play. It is a type of creativity, and it helps other creativity. But, you know, which in that article, which is just sort of glanced over, there's a dark side to humor.
Right.
A very, very dark side.
And I wanted to raise that because he does mention it briefly, the sardonic dark side. And it got me thinking about all these comedians who have had troubled lives. Lenny Bruce, John Belushi, John Cleese.
Right.
And I had to say, you've had 3 marriages, right?
3 marriages. And they just keep getting better and better.
Yes.
Well, but that's different. You're talking about really the emotional thing where humor comes out of. And it does come from some type of pain. Humor is about everything that is embarrassing, uncomfortable, whatever. If you have a great vacation, no humor comes out of that. If you have a lousy vacation and the luggage are lost, there are jokes. So there's a coping function of humor, and I really, you know, use it all the time. But the other part of humor is that there's cruelty to humor. And it's also used that way. Overwhelmingly, historically, humor has been about ridicule. And it's not, you know, it's not ridicule of people above, it's ridicule of people below.
Right.
If you look at the Punch cartoons from the 19th century, it's the Irish. Or the Aussies, or whatever. It's the upper class looking down at the lower class. And when you really say, well, what is it? What is it that's almost always going to be funny? Embarrassment. Not right then, but anything that's embarrassing is funny. And what is the thing that tells you it's embarrassing? Somebody laughing at you. So there's a side to humor. A lot of humor is just used for social control. If you remember high school or elementary school, you're using humor actually to make other people conform. So the Weems book is interesting, and all that. It's all right, but I with Strange resent a little bit as humorous people making it this sort of panacea. You know, Norman Cousins, you know, Anatomy of an Illness and stuff like that. You know, let me put it this way. Laughter may be the best medicine, but still use a dialysis.
Right. Well, we have this routine at the end of every afterword. We're going to subject you to it, and that is that the author is to select one of these 3 routine questions that we have, read it out, and then just give us your answer to it. So let's see what you come up with. You get one, that's all right, we'll take that.
Okay, I only do one, right?
You do one, you don't get to cheat on getting 2, so what do we have?
So this says, would you like to be able to get $200 million from a Nigerian bank account?
Right, actually.
No, that's not what it says. Okay, what book or writer had the most influence on your life and why? Well, you know, I'm trying to think of whether I don't know.
In this case, you could just say cartoonist if you like.
Yeah, cartoonist. Well, for me, it was Saul Steinberg.
Okay.
Because Saul Steinberg did write in ink. It was full of words. When I talked about the New Yorker stuff, he showed that cartooning could be funny and dignified and sublime. He showed really a great mind at work in this medium. And I'm not saying that I had a great mind, but it made me aspire, you know, to something more than like just gags or family circus or whatever. And in the early part of the book, that it was, you could be both really funny and really clever and satisfy my parents' requirements, make some money, and be respectable as well.
Well, on that note, Bob Mankoff, thank you very much for your time. The book is How About Never Is Never Good For You. I'm Michael Casey. Thanks very much for joining us.